We are back with another episode of Three Magic Words. I'm your host, Kevin, aka the Handsome Hulk, Stockford, and I'm here with the Morpheus of medicine, Dr. Garcia.
You think that's air you're breathing right now? Here we are. Had to do that. Welcome back. Thanks for coming. I want to say this is the 7th episode, and we do these, and I speak to Kevin multiple times per week, and I've never been more nervous for a show than this one. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, man. What are your thoughts? How are those thoughts affecting your emotions? Why are those thoughts there?
Well, here's what it is. And if you haven't looked at the screen yet, the title of the show is "Fuck Those Pills," which may be a bit controversial. In fact, I want all the good people over at HUR Radio, Sirius Satellite, to keep your finger on the bleep button because that word's going to be dropped numerous times today. But there's a reason for it. I've been working on this book, man. I've been talking about it for a long time. And so we are going to kind of break the book down a little bit. I wanted to be able to show those at home. Fuck those pills. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to get it all out. Fuck those pills. Fuck those pills. Fuck those pills. I've said it several times.
Fuck those pills.
But for all of our conservative listeners, we will now be referring to the book as F Those Pills. And we're going to talk about the title. We'll talk about the whole book. But F Those Pills, now available on Amazon. Let's talk about it, bro.
Dude, this book, it seriously changed my life. And I get the privilege of being able to consult with you on this stuff because you're my PCP and then also you're my boy. But this book also helped me to dial it in because it's all right there. So I was able to kind of go back to all my little stuff that I do, all the people might call it biohacking stuff that I do and dial it in a little bit more. But your book is valuable in a sense where what I love about the books that I read, and I'm going to use Think and Grow Rich as an example. Think and Grow Rich was written by Napoleon Hill, and Napoleon Hill studied the 500 most successful people of his time, and he found the common denominators in each one of these successful people's thoughts and lives. And
just for the people that don't know, we're talking about Ford, we're talking about Carnegie. We're talking about the big names in American business and history. He took those people, analyzed what made them successful, and just brought it into like a little, just a collection of something that you and I can read and study.
So I don't have to go individually study all these 500 people. I can get the common denominators and I can get them all in one book. And then Nero in Outsmarting Reality.
Shout out to Nero. We love you.
Dude, that book was brought my manifestation skills to the next level because he did the same thing. He studied manifestation. He studied the philosophers. He studied all those different ideas out there. And then he was able to take the level that he got into and package it in a way where he can combine all this stuff and help you skip a lot of those steps. Your book was literally the same thing.
P.S. on that Nero book, I probably read that book 3 times, and I was telling you, I tried to reach out to Nero and tell him, listen, man, I took your formula and I just repackaged it here from a medical standpoint. So yeah, and thank you for reading it. I know reading is not like the American pastime anymore, so I appreciate you, putting your nose at the grindstone and checking it out. Did you, man? We're getting, wanted to talk about a million other things first, but just did you find it easy to read? Was it something that you could get through, like? Quickly.
Absolutely.
That's the whole point. I don't want someone spending, their whole, got time to be sitting there reading medical jargon all the time.
Oh, dude, it was actually a very entertaining read because of the way you wrote it. And if anybody's watched this show for a long enough period of time, they'll know that you're a guy you're very entertaining, bro. You just are. You're able to, no, you are. You're able to convey information in a way that is relatable. And you've done the same thing with the book. So one thing I loved about the book too is that to some extent, you do have to talk the talk. So you toss a little bit of that stuff out there just to kind of help me as a reader understand, like, okay, there are levels to this thing. I'm not going to go there, but I'm just letting you know that, hey, these things have been taken into consideration. So when I package this to you, you don't need to go, and if you think you got to research every little thing, you got to understand every little thing in order to understand this, you don't. To some extent, you do have to trust the process. I mean, if somebody's going to go put gutters on my house, and that's what my brother does, so that's why I'm using this example, I don't need to understand how to put the gutters up, what the material's made out of, either I trust the guy or I don't.
Right.
I've gotten the person who's got the experience or I don't. And the mobility thing, same exact thing. I can explain to you the anatomy of the joint, the anatomy of the tissue, and the deepest layers of tissue and what direction the tissue runs in, and that's why you should be in this range of motion. It's going to put you to sleep.
Well, that's exactly the point for writing the book, right? Because I've read, I don't know if it's over, it's over 200. I don't know how many over 200, right? And it would occur to me that, like, okay, all of the answers to the questions that Americans have about their health have been addressed. It's been discussed. The research has been done. But I think the doctors that write them, and I love them, you know, Fung, my favorite, you know, Gundry, all of these guys, at some level, I think they're trying to impress other doctors, you know, because they write the shit in like this prose and with this vernacular that a regular person couldn't understand, right? So what's the point of all of the health information, right? It's to get healthy. And I think these doctors, you know, they as good intentioned as they are, there's this thing in the medical community that you have to speak a certain way. You have to make it sound very convoluted and scientific. But what's the point of all of this? Who are we trying to impress? That's my point. Who are we trying to impress? I don't need to impress the other doctors, right? You guys are all scholarly and you guys went to Harvard and whatnot. I'm here to try to help people. And so that's kind of was the impetus behind writing the book. You're either going to trust me that I read all this shit and I know what I'm talking about, or you need to spend 15 years reading each of these books individually by all of these, you know, these various, you know, scholarly physicians. So anyway, just trying to hit people in the chest with good information.
And not only that, they're going to have to study all the prerequisite information to be able to understand the terminology. It's a different language.
It's funny that you say that. So an example, I had, you know, can't have a show without talking about John Goss, my man John Goss, right? He's the hair loss guy. Talk about him on every episode. But anyway, he had asked me, he was talking about putting together a system where his pharmacy could communicate via the computer and the internet. And it was like, you know, talking about APIs, which is like high level computer stuff as far as I'm concerned. I don't know anything about computers, but like basically so the person that could solve this problem for John Goss was going to be getting like $300K per month. If you could, you know, figure it. I think I talked to you about this before. So I was like, $300K a month. I better dedicate some time and effort to this. So I go on and I start using ChatGPT and I start looking up, you know, stuff on the internet about the computer, and it's another language, bro. Like it's all there. It's all written. Okay, you got to get the API and you got to get and I can't even, the words are so convoluted, I can't even repeat them, right? But I was thinking, this is what Americans are doing with their health, you know, and they think, okay, well, I looked it up on Google. And it's funny. So like I'm on Instagram and the comments that people make on Instagram, man, it just shows the depth of lack of understanding that people have, you know, but the funniest part about it is that they will talk to you as though they are spitting gospel truth, and their confidence in what they believe, which is actually completely erroneous, is shocking. You know what I mean? Little example, I was sharing it with you earlier today. I made a post and I was discussing how insulin is the root cause of type 2 diabetes. Insulin is the root cause of obesity. Insulin's among the root causes of hypertension. I got a comment underneath it that says, what did he say? He said, insulin causes diabetes. That's the stupidest shit I ever heard. Go read a book. And, you know, this is the thing I'm going through where like, I don't want to engage with people on the internet, you know, like none of the big doctors argue with dipshits on the internet, but I'm not a big doctor yet. And I haven't learned this lesson yet. Right. So I told the guy, you know, be less, he was a DJ, by the way. He was a record guy. I said, listen, you spin the music and be less confident in your physiology. He says, then he responds, he says, as a type 1 diabetic, I can tell you that insulin is needed in diabetes. And I told him, listen, young man, if you as a type 1 diabetic take too much insulin, you will develop insulin resistance and become a type 2 diabetic. And he instantly didn't reply again. And I thought, yeah, like there's levels to this shit, man. Like it's not the one little nugget that you know, right, is not a complete thought. And anyway, my point being just, I think like Americans are trying to Google their way through their health. And it's just another language, man. It's another language. And I think it's the doctor's responsibility to bring that language to people, you know? So that's what I'm trying to do with the book. Just keep it real simple, real high level, and concise.
What you talk about in the book, Big Pharma, and the fact that they have a hand in the curriculum of medical information and knowledge that's required to be learned by people going into medical school and people becoming doctors and providers and physicians. And
This is something I don't think a lot of people understand. It's a critically important point to understand. The American College of Physicians, all of these governing bodies of medicine, they receive money from pharma, right? And so when you receive that money from pharma, it's not because they like you. It's not because they think you're a great institution. They're paying for something. And what they're doing is basically they're paying for space in the board review books that we all have to study. So all the doctors basically have to study the same set of books to be able to pass their boards. And the information that's in those books is brought into those books by pharma. So, and that's a point that I make in the book, it's important to know that, the doctors are essentially being trained by pharma, which I don't think a lot of people, realize that that's the case, or the extent to which that's the case.
So what you're saying is that these double-blind, random sample studies that are being done are being funded by big pharma.
I don't know the exact how much it costs to do a randomized controlled trial, but it's like in the millions and millions and millions of dollars, right? So they've done studies on this where they see like the outcome of a study that's paid for by pharma. Well, I want to say it's 80% more likely for them to find a benefit of the drug that they're studying when it's paid for by pharma, because they're called primary investigators, the PIs. They know they're getting paid to show benefit. I mean, it's not a secret, right? That's a deep wormhole, man. But yeah, that's what's happening.
So and I think about this in what I do with the mobility stuff. If you are going on the standard model.
Sorry. Speaking of the mobility stuff, Big Kev, I have sent about 3 or 4 of my patients to you that were like, the one guy that jumps to mind is the golf pro. Mm-hmm. Golf pro came in, all types of back pain, was talking about they wanted to do spinal fusion or some sort of a nerve ablation. And I told him, check out Kevin's stuff. And so I don't know, he sounds like he talked to you, because he told me that he wanted to do one-on-ones with you after watching your videos. But mm-hmm. I saw him the other day and he was like, it was one of those, like, he didn't want to say, I'm better, but he was kind of like, it was a good move. He was like, so far so good was the word that he used. And he seemed very upbeat about it, So kudos to you, man.
My favorite thing is when they forget about what they came in with. So somebody will come in, my shoulder's killing me, and I'll write everything down. And 3 or 4 months later, I'll be, how's your shoulder feel? And they're like, my shoulder? What do you mean? Like,
forget about it.
You came in complaining of shoulder pain.
Yep.
I did? Like, yeah, you did. And I'll show them
literally
the
why
notes,
we met.
And they'll be like, wow, like, feels great. So yeah. I love that. But, to get back though to the standard model of medicine, and I know that we're kind of kicking the medical hornet nest right now, so to speak, but if your doctor, if your provider or specialist is practicing only the standard model, then you have to know, and it makes total sense, that they are going off of either outdated information or information that's been tailored by the people who are making profits on this industry. So if that provider hasn't deviated away from that standard model and tried to figure out some of the new cutting edge stuff, I mean, what do you do? Do you just keep taking your statin medication?
You fire his ass, man. You fire his ass and you go look for somebody else. The issue is, and I talk about this in the book, doctors are like, so you read the board review books and you get your license, and then you get money, right? And then you get to live your life, right? And I know a lot of people think that like doctors are like, like burning the candle and like reading late into the night. They're not. They want to, they want to drink a beer. They want to go walk their dog. They hang out with their wife and kids. And so it kind of, you get that doctor money, and then what's your incentive to continue to learn, right? I mean, learning is fucking hard, right? I mean, it takes hours and hours and hours. But I don't know of any other way. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to be an effective doctor learning off of, YouTube or you're not going to be watching podcasts. You got to sit there and dig, right? And so that takes effort. And I mean, just, think about it. How happy are you to do something that's uncomfortable, right? It's not something that most people are doing. And I know it ruffles feathers when I say that, but I mean, it is what it is. I hang out with doctors. They are not the studious people that they would like to portray to the public.
And we'll touch on the deeper aspects of that a little bit later on in the show. But I just wanted to bring up the point that when somebody is coming into you and they've got all this stuff going on, and they have a preconceived notion of what needs to be done, and then you tell them what needs to be done, but they want to hold on to their preconceived notion of what they thought needed to be done. I mean, I know that's kind of a roundabout way to say, but people want to stay in their comfort zone. How do you bring somebody out of that comfort zone? I mean, how do you inspire the person to be like, you know what? I know this feels uncomfortable, but I know this is exactly what I need.
I think, it's 100% in the delivery. You know what I mean? It's, I got this thing, we're gonna take the white coat out of medicine, right? So I try to sit with people. I try to sit very close to them. And I try to like, the point is, okay, you got to where you are doing what you thought, right? That's why you're here. So in order to change something, you got to change something. And if you can't grasp that, man, hey, listen, here's your statin, bro. Here's your lisinopril. If it's more than a handful of people and now at this point in my career, I've learned when I start to talk, when I start getting these rebuttals immediately that why they can't, it's easier for me. That makes the visit go by much quicker because I know I'm dealing with someone that wants to just take their lisinopril for their blood pressure. They want to take their statin and they want to go about their day, and that's fine. Early in my career, I used to like try to wrestle them down and like fix them, but I'm done with that now.
Either they're ready or they're not, dude. We talked about the Morpheus analogy, and you really are, because you did wake me up. But I used to be the same way as a trainer. I think I was 27, and shout out to the beautiful Kristen, who was a client of mine, and she came to me with the keto diet. And the only thing I knew is what I learned in nutrition class. So she was telling me about the benefits of keto and everything, and I morphed right into Agent Smith and threw up my set, and I was like, no, you got to have 50 to 60% of your diet be carbohydrates. Your brain uses exclusively
glucose
why
that
for
is?
energy.
Do you know why you were taught that? Because the FDA is they are the ones that create that curriculum, which, and I'm sorry to cut you off, and don't forget about the ketos thing, but the registered dietitians, they are the most vehement and they are the most ravenous critics when I talk about nutrition, because I have been taught, and it's not that they're bad people.
No.
It's what they learned, and that's what they believe. And just like the doctors, they stop. Mm-hmm. They got educated. They're done. Now they go to work, right? But if you pick up, listen, if you pick up 5 books on health, you will quickly realize that intermittent fasting, everyone agrees, is helpful. Too much carbohydrates, when I do my CMEs, continuing medical education, I was reading through it just for fun. I was reading through it, and it was saying doctors should be teaching their patients to avoid diabetes by reducing their fat intake. And I thought to myself, holy shit, this is what they're teaching the doctors at this point, which that's embarrassing. If you've read anything, that's an embarrassing thing. Anyway, sorry. So you were saying the keto diet, she came to you, and you weren't trying to hear it.
Bro, I just wasn't ready.
You threw her out.
I wasn't ready. Yeah, well, and you know what? I did, actually. And she had grace enough to walk back and say...
How'd that conversation go?
She apologizes, and we continued the session. But man, like I said, shout out to the beautiful, amazing, graceful Kristen, who at that time was still able to maintain her opinion and her composure.
But how'd you do it, though? How'd you throw her out?
I just told her like session's
we can't
done.
Work together.
Session's done. Like, you know what I mean? I
out of here.
You won't let me do my job or whatever, But I mean, what an ignorant point of view from my end, right? And
I have a lot of the people they comment on when they go into their endocrinologist or they go into their rheumatologist. And rheumatologist says, when they present them with something like intestinal permeability, leaky gut, whatever. The endocrinologist will be like, that's not a real thing. If that's what you want, I can't be your physician. Like, I've been trained this way, and they just shut it down, right? And it's how they were trained. They're not bad people. It's how you were trained.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, what was super interesting, though, is your perspective of the fact that, okay, you're a doctor who's seen tens of thousands of patients, owns your own practice, and you've read all this literature, this cutting edge literature, and you decided to write a book, and you didn't say, which logic would say, if I write a book for physicians, it's going to be those physicians will be able to touch the 500 patients that they see, and it's going to be this nuclear effect. No, you were like, I'm not writing one for physicians. I'm going to write one for the people. Now, why did you decide to write it for the people and for the layperson rather than writing it for the provider?
2 reasons. One, I sincerely believe, and I'm sorry, guys, I love you. I love our profession, but I think they are indoctrinated. They're fully indoctrinated. And I honestly feel like, it's cognitive dissonance. You've learned this. This is how it's supposed to be. And now you got some shit over here that doesn't fit into your schema. And so, and the other thing is, there's what's called guideline directed therapy. And that's what comes from those board books, those board review books. Those are the guidelines, right? But doctors have taken guidelines to mean absolute fucking rule that must be followed at all times. And I'm going to give a shout out to this dude that if I ever see him in the street, we'll go out into the parking lot. But this Dr. Brooks that I used to work with, can't stand the guy. But one day when I was working at his practice, I was like maybe the first year out of residency. He sat down next to me and I was talking to him about guideline therapy. And he said, Fabian, they're guidelines. They're meant to guide. They are not the rules. And so I think doctors are afraid to get away from guideline-directed therapy because they're afraid they're going to get sued if they have an original thought that's not in these books. That's reason one. I think the doctor profession, by and large, when I'm looking for new physicians to come into the clinic, I'm looking for someone straight out of residency. I don't want you to have all the bad habits and you've been jaded and you believe all these certain things. I want a young kid that I'm going to be able to kind of mold to my liking. That's one. And two, Americans are looking for guidance. I mean, they're hungry for knowledge. You see on Instagram and they're exchanging information and they're Googling and they're looking and they're curious. They want to know and they're looking for someone to guide them. And so I felt like, and I know America is not a bunch of readers. That's why I made the book so short. I want to get directly to them because I don't trust that physicians will deliver this the way that I think it should be delivered.
Yeah, but common sense would assume that an educated doctor is going to be easier to convince with scientific proof than your layperson, right? So, I mean, but you chose to present the information in your book to the layperson. So, I really want to know why do you think it's just so much harder to convince a physician to think outside of the box than it is a layperson?
They have a white coat. They have a title. They have, there's like an element of you're a prestigious person, and I think, again, it's difficult for someone to learn and accept new things that do not fit in where you already are. When your authority gets challenged, it's a personal affront almost. You can, and I think probably patients sense that their physician is getting irritated with them, and then now we got these, the visit 7 minutes, 10 minutes. What can you possibly teach somebody in 7 minutes? I say in the book, the only advice they're giving is take this medicine on a full stomach. It's not enough.
You also said something that hit too. If you fire your doctor and you leave, they probably won't even notice that you're gone.
Oh, I can't tell you how many of my patients they say, well, so I should just not go to that doctor anymore, and I don't want to hurt his feelings. I've liked him for so long. I said, you think he knows? You think he knows when you come and go? He don't know. He sees 20 patients. That's on his schedule. That's what he does 5 days a week.
And I want to talk about the fact that what kicked all this off really was this principle of what's in the way becomes the way, because you talk about the fact that COVID happens, you're working in a hospital, and everything kind of gets thrown into disorder. All these people are sick, all these policies, and then they get to this point where they're not allowing you to practice medicine anymore. And that kind of woke you up and you're like, whoa, like what's going on here? You're telling me I can't prescribe this thing that is shown to be effective and has been proven to be effective, and why?
And it's not only, maybe at the time, so we're talking about ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. It was maybe more difficult to say that it was actually effective because we were in the moment, but it was definitely not harmful. And the way that it was painted in the media was, you guys are prescribing horse dewormer and these guys are crazy. Wait a minute. Ivermectin's been used, I want to say, since like the early 90s. Hydroxychloroquine for 60 years, So yeah, that really woke me up to know that, okay, something fishy is going on. And I, as a licensed physician, should never have my prescribing habits dictated to me by some higher up, who doesn't know anything about this, right? Or I should never be having pharmacists telling me, you can't do this. I'm not going to hurt anybody. This is called off-label medication use. It's super common. I want to say 30% of medicines in this country are written off off-label, right? Which means they're given for something other than what the drug was initially made for. So yeah, so it was Pierre Corey, the FLCCC, the Frontline COVID Critical Care Group. They came out, they testified in front of Congress, and they said, "Listen, this is what we're seeing," and the guy Pierre Corey, I'd love to meet him. He almost was like in tears over it, I could just tell that he was like begging Congress to like implement this, and that was just seeing the intensity in his face. It was like intuition, this guy's saying something important. Let me figure this out. And so I started to do the protocol. It was with like vitamin D. I want to say it was quercetin. It was a steroid, ivermectin. And then I started getting calls from the pharmacists. Hey, you can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. And I thought, well, do you have a better plan? And no one did it. And I can go down a very deep conspiratorial rabbit hole. Anyone who has not read The Real Anthony Fauci, which, speaking of Anthony Fauci, what a piece of shit. But yeah, they were basically trying to disprove the efficacy of any medication that existed, right? They had to say that nothing worked so that they could roll out their emergency vaccines, and they could also roll out remdesivir, which was still on patent. Anyway, I could talk forever about that.
But think about this,
very
though.
Sad.
Something like that. Maybe this book doesn't exist. Maybe your practice doesn't exist. Maybe if
doesn't happen,
if COVID doesn't happen,
bro, bring out the comment from the girl on the 3 Magic Words thing.
Yeah, man. So
Kevin shared this thing with me. This is perfect segue into what this girl had said.
And I thought it was really perfect as well, timing wise, because she sent it today at like maybe 4 a.m. or something like that. So this is a fresh, raw comment. But this person,
so this is on our 3 Magic Words Instagram page. Follow
and like the video title is "The Detour Was a Direction," where we just basically talk about how what's in the way becomes the way, and the
universe is always looking out for you, right? Like whatever's happening, although it may seem like a roadblock.
The bridge of incidents. That's another term I want to introduce to the show. This is a Neville Goddard term where it's basically, if you believe in your future, if you visualize it, if you feel it, if you become it, you don't know the little things that are going to happen. It's called the bridge of incidents. That's going to lead up to that. But things are going to happen unexpectedly. But if you know you're becoming that, if you know you're doing everything, if you know you're feeling everything, then you can be confident that, oh, this has to be a part of it. Seems like a setback, but it's really a setup.
So hold on. Before you say, I want to say Nero broke it down. I thought it was I think it was Nero or maybe another guy. He said, listen, if you've seen the movie Moana, right? You've seen it. Right? You know that she restores the heart of Tafiti at the end and saves the day. So are you going to get anxious in the middle when she's, when Maui's messing with her? No, there's going to be a happy ending. Just keep going. It's okay. Shit's going to happen, but you got to deviate, get around it, and get to where you're going.
Such a
bridge
good
of
analogy.
incidents.
Such a good analogy. Neville Goddard also uses that same analogy, that if you've seen the ending of a play or a movie, that no matter how anticlimactic it gets, you're always going to feel confident and secure knowing what the ending is. But this comment to the video, "The Detour Was a Direction," on the
we're reading your comments. We are in the comment section.
We are in there, man. And this girl, I suppose, and you never know if it's a real person or a bot or whatever, but this person said, "Fail to see how being debilitated from May Thurner syndrome and losing my career is in my favor."
So May Thurner syndrome is like that's like a thoracic outlet. This is where you don't get there's blockage in your anatomy so that your blood can't flow in a certain way, and it could obviously be painful and debilitating. But who knows what's going to happen next? Maybe she lost that job, and then she's going to pick up some other job. The thing with Dr. Brooks, when he fired me, I was devastated. But if he never fired me, then I never would have gone to the hospital during COVID. I never would have met my business partner who had the clinic set up and was looking for a physician. I never would have been able to get into my clinic, and I never would have been able to put this protocol together that I've put together now. So Miss, have a goal and keep moving towards it, because even your May Thurner syndrome, it's going to be a blessing. You're going to see.
Dude, that brings me to this situation I had. Same thing. So I was, you met my ex-girlfriend, right?
Yes.
The Filipino ex-girlfriend. And we were together 6 years, and we decided to take separate paths to success. We started seeing each other again. And she was staying over my house and everything. And I told her, hey, if you're going to stay the night at my house, you're going to stay here when I leave and everything like that. You're going to have to stop talking to the guys that you're talking to. And there was this silence. I mean, it was probably, it felt like 10 minutes, but it was probably 10 seconds of silence. And she stood up, she grabbed her purse, and she walked out.
Done. Didn't say anything.
Didn't say anything. That was it.
Gangster.
And bro,
Sheesh.
if that didn't happen,
Thank God it happened.
maybe I don't have my son right now.
Right.
Maybe we're not sitting in front of each other right now.
How'd you feel at that moment, though? Did you feel like slighted? Like, yeah, I'm handsome Hulk. You don't know who I am?
I was on the fence, but it was at the time, especially, I didn't have really that much. I didn't have that much focus toward controlling my emotions, and it was a little more reactive at that time in my life. I think I was 35, something like that. So, but basically, there was this split moment decision where this timeline splits off because of her decision, right? And if she would have said yes, maybe I don't have my son.
Yeah.
So you look back at those moments, and at the time I felt like, oh man, I'm losing my best friend. Like I thought we were closer than this or whatever, right? But now I look back and I just want to thank her. Like, thank you so much for just, I mean, and it almost makes me think my future self manifested something crazy because she had some sort of influence on her intuition and I don't want to get too spiritual into it, but it's what we think is in the way becomes the way. And it really is the truth.
Yeah.
When you think you've been buried, you've been planted. It is true. So anybody out there who's going through something, one of three things can happen. You can let it destroy you, some event in your life. You can let it define you, or you can let it strengthen you. You can pick one of those three. I choose to let it strengthen me. That's my choice. And you can make the same choice. So why wouldn't you?
So kind of on a similar and a more recent example of that, just yesterday I was outside doing my yard work and stuff like that, and I went to go check my Instagram page. I had just put a video up on the thyroid and on body temperature, and it was getting some good hits. And I go to turn on my Instagram, and it says, you've been kicked off of Instagram for violating our community guidelines or something like that. And so like I got a book coming out, right? Like this is like my lifeline to a bit of a public that, I'm sharing with, right? And I was sort of proud. I mean, it jolted me, let me be clear. But my first initial thought was, well, we'll have to find another way. I'm going to have to get around this some type of way. And I think I told you I was going to talk to, my man Rhymecology. I was going to talk to another rapper friend that I know who has a lot of following. And I was thinking, okay, but as opposed to, despair, which, and that may sound corny to people looking at it, but like when you got a following on Instagram and this is kind of, I'm trying to bring this book out to the public. I don't have like commercial money to be that's my public,
You put a lot of work in that.
And I put a lot of work into that. So and there's a happy ending to the story because this is maybe 10 minutes later, let it go. I'll figure something else out. I get an email saying, oh, this was a mistake. You have been reinstated and your Instagram account is back, back normal. So, but yeah, to your point, choose your emotion, choose your emotion.
The fact is the universe only speaks in emotion, in feeling, whatever you want to call it. And if you're afraid of something, that's still putting a signal out there to attract that thing to you because you're putting an emotion into the field that's dialed into this specific thing, whatever that thing
Let me tell you something real quick. When I was in the Dominican Republic in medical school, I had a girlfriend that I would hang out with. She was afraid of lizards. But I'm talking about deathly afraid of lizards, right? So the day I realized it was serious, she would stay over at my apartment. I had to go to class, so I leave, and I'm walking out of the building, and I hear a blood-curdling scream. I said, that's Patty. Run back into the apartment, and she's standing on her tippy toes, and she's pointing up to the corner of the wall that there was a lizard on the roof, and I almost choked her out. I said, listen, you say that's the scream that you say for when you are being raped or violated in some serious way. Anyway, she was so afraid of these things. We would go out. This happened a number of times. We'd be sunbathing, right? Laying down, sunbathing, and a kimono lizard like this big would crawl over her body. And I said, I've never seen that happen ever to anyone. But you, who constantly focuses on your fear of lizards, they crawl over your body while you're in a bathing suit, right? That's like, explain that. It has to be the attraction.
It's a fact. It is a fact. And I also wanted to ask you about the grand unified theory. So this is something that's completely changed my life, and how I conceptualized it was you broke it down into how do you make yourself healthy from the smallest point like let's say the electron all the way down. Not okay. You got the cell, you've got the organelles, you've got
Yeah.
the things that govern the organelles, and then that's going to go upstream and affect everything else. So
Yeah.
that's something you talk about in the book, and that has changed my life. And I was proud to say I did everything in that protocol except the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. But we'll touch on that a
You
little
gotta
bit
have
more.
money. You gotta have money for that.
Well,
One day we'll have one in the
yeah,
house.
No, I mean I do, but it's one thing I'm not doing. But if so how can you? So I want to talk about that. I just want to bring that up, and I just want to.
All right, so I know what you want to say. So the problem is, and this is where I think the lay public needs to see something. When you look at medicine, there's all of these different diseases, right? There's ankylosing spondylitis, rheumatoid arthritis, there's Crohn's disease, there's all these different things. And if you see all of these things as separate entities, then shit is complicated. Right? That's complicated. You got to know about this. There's 33,000 ICD-10 codes, which ICD-10 represents a specific diagnosis. So, I mean, very loosely said, the implication is there's 33,000 different diseases, right? But as I read, man, and read, it's really not that many diseases, right? It's really kind of just two. And I'm talking about 90%, right? I mean, there's always going to be some genetic outlier, I know, right? But what I'm saying is there's really too much inflammation that manifests as rheumatoid arthritis. It can manifest as eczema. It can manifest as Crohn's disease. It can manifest as ulcerative colitis. It manifests as cancer. It manifests in all these different ways. And there's too much insulin, right? So then when you go from being, okay, there's 33,000 diseases, I can't deal with that, let me go to my doctor, he'll tell me what to do, to, oh wait, there's two problems, and I can fix 80 to 90% of those problems by just addressing these two core features. I think that simplifies everything, right? And then and then if you dig even a little bit deeper, and you realize that we're just a collection of cells, and in order for your cells to work properly, your mitochondria has to work properly. Then if you can direct all your vectors of intent towards your mitochondria, if your mitochondria work well, then guess what? Your cells work well. And if your cells work well, your tissues work well, organs work well. And when you have your organs working well, you don't have chronic disease. So that was like the unified theory, was just to point out that, yeah, a lot going on, but there's a common denominator. And that's kind of where I'm getting at with the Renee's unified protocol.
It was fascinating, man, the electron transport chain and how you explained some of the processes behind that and how the electrons can not be optimally being transferred, and then those basically leak out and cause oxidative stress, which produces free radicals or
Hold on, pause.
something like that.
Did you get that from my book?
Yeah, I did. 100%. Yes, I did.
Warming my heart that you were able to take that away.
How else would I have gotten it? No, I'm just kidding. But
yeah, man. I mean, so the electron transport chain is what's making ATP. That's energy, right? When the electrons don't flow smoothly through the electron transport chain, they fumble out and they cause reactive oxygen species. And that is essentially the thrust of all problems, right? So to be able to keep the electrons flowing effectively and efficiently through the electron chain, and we know enough to know kind of where the common failure points are in the electron transport chain, and supplement those. Do everything you can now. Be proactive. Don't wait until you have dementia. Let's do it now, right? Understand this now. And that's kind of what the standard medical paradigm has done. It lets you get sick, and then here's your tablet.
Treats the symptom, not the cause.
No. We got to make this has to be a paradigm shift. And again, I've said this before, and I've picked on Gen Z before, but they are perfectly poised to be able to. They're in their 20s now. They're into this now, and to be able to optimize themselves all the way through, their 90s and their 10th decade, 11th decades, God willing.
So, and this term is thrown around, and I love that you touch on this in your book and clear it up. But inflammation, you hear inflammation. I mean, you know what it is, kind of, right? I mean, you got a little injury, you get some inflammation, something swells up. But I never knew what it actually was inside of the bloodstream or inside of the system, or how it manifests. And you talk about how eating processed carbs and the production of this thing called zonulin, what you say, and I quote, punches holes in your small intestine. And you're basically taking the good bacteria that's in your intestines, and it's being funneled into your bloodstream, and then that's causing some sort of an immune response from your body that's trying to attack it and trying to subdue it. And then this is what causes the inflammation in your body. So
it's the same inflammation. When you scrape your arm, I think I used the example of a little girl falls off her bike. You know, she cuts herself, right? And what's it going to look like? It's going to be warm to the touch. It's going to be red. It's going to be painful, right? That's rubor, calor, dolor. This is what they say in medicine. This is like these are the cardinal signs of inflammation. But then, you know, once your body has its inflammatory response, your immune system kicks the ass of whatever's causing, you know, the bacteria that has gotten in there in the foreign material, and then it gets back to normal, right? With chronic inflammation, it's that same process that's happening, but it never goes back to normal. And it just, you know, it just travels around in your bloodstream. And that's why chronic inflammation, you say, well, how can I don't get it. How can that be? But it's in your blood, and it's moving around your blood like a highway, like the Autobahn, right? It's affecting your brain, causing, you know, anxiety, depression. It's affecting your thyroid, causing, you know, Hashimoto's. It's affecting your joints, causing rheumatoid. It's affecting your skin, causing eczema. It's affecting your gut, causing, you know, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, all these inflammatory conditions. Again, when you look at them as separate entities, it's too much. I need a drug for that. I need a drug for that. I need a different drug for that and a different drug for that. And I need that. No. Fix your immune system, fix the chronic inflammation, and you don't need any of those drugs. And this is so important for people to understand, you know, that's a thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It frustrates me really that that's not, you know, because like I'm not a brilliant man, right? I'm a kind of I'm a bookworm.
Give yourself some credit, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. But what I'm saying is, if I know this, why isn't it on television? Why aren't there commercials? Or why isn't this being like, why doesn't our government give us this? Why is it
message?
It's kind of sad and it's frustrating. And then, you know, the Instagram gurus, they don't know it. And so when I say something like this, then I'm a quack and a dipshit. And it's like, okay, you don't know what you don't know, you know?
Oh, that Agent Smith morphs out and throws up the Kung Fu stance. And you're like, all right, here we go.
Right.
You got to Neo it up. But, you know, I think explaining that, and you call it leaky gut, and I know that's the term that's used, but even you mentioned this in the book too, is that the term leaky gut in itself will kind of make you think it's a gimmick, but it's not. It's a real thing, right? You're eating too many processed carbs. You're creating too much zonulin, which is causing your small intestine to absorb your good bacteria and then cause an immune response in the body.
I jokingly say, the worst thing they did with leaky gut was call it leaky gut. I read leaky gut. Let me tell you something. No joke, I read about it. And I didn't read about it, but I came across the term probably for 2 years.
And you just thought it was like a side effect from eating Chipotle.
I thought it was bullshit. I thought it was total BS. I was like, I'm not going to read about this. But then it was like, I had to get my ego out of the way and realize, wait a minute, all of these physicians are talking about this thing. Let me figure out what this thing is. And then once you got that information, it was like, oh, I could fix anything. Or at least, and listen, and by the way, I in my book is meant to simplify, right? And so when you get on social media, like if you don't point out like the rarest thing, they're going to call you, oh, what about this example, right? So there are other things that can cause leaky gut. But what I'm saying is, as Americans, on the daily, day in and day out, things that we are doing very guiltlessly and kind of subconsciously that are causing a giant problem, right? So the question is, has God forgotten how to make humans, right? Or because there's so much disease, God must have forgotten how to make people, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't all be broken. Or, and more likely, are we all doing the same thing wrong and we're paying for it? We're paying for our actions in another way. And I mean, I don't mean to be like a religious guy, God guy. I do believe, you know, after thousands of years of mind-boggling perfection when making the human race, you know, I think God knows what he's doing, right? I think it's probably more likely the second scenario that we're doing something wrong.
But man, you're taking away people's bread. That's like taking away a crackhead's crack, man. It really is.
Man, and you know,
that's the battle you're fighting.
They get on me. They say, well, Jesus ate bread. Which cracks me up because I'm like, dude, do you think Jesus was buying bread from Publix, bro?
He also fasted for 40 days and 40 nights.
Let me see you do that.
Yeah.
Let me see you do that.
Start right now.
Yeah, no. I mean, the bread that we're eating is like a vestige of what real bread actually is, right? And I mean, I can go into to that. It's on my Instagram. You can find it up there. But yeah, that's flawed logic. You know, you're just looking for some sort of loophole, some sort of way to not have to change your behavior.
Well, I can't have sourdough?
Oh, man. Pumpernickel?
What about whole wheat?
What about sprouted?
Ezekiel? But wait
I've
a
heard it all,
second.
bro.
I
I've heard
got
it
some organic, artisanal bread that was made in Italy by some dude named Luca.
I only buy my flour from Italy. Can I eat bread then? Ugh, it's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Now, we also...
I love you guys.
We
I'm just
also, though,
playing
did
with you.
talk about... So, one thing I'm always curious in is how can I live the longest, most high-quality life possible? Somebody might be a professional athlete or an endurance athlete or something like that. To that, they're kind of putting their body to the side, and they are putting their body on the line a little bit, but their diet might have to contain some carbs, right? But from what I understand, if you do something gluten-free, it's going to reduce the zonulin, and it could help you to reduce the inflammation.
Here's my take on that, man. And yes, and I get a lot of pushback about this. There's other carbs that aren't processed carbs, man. I mean, there's this guy that I follow on Instagram. I love him. I can't remember his name right now. He says, if you want to get lean and jacked, all you need is chicken and potatoes and ground beef and rice. There's beautiful carbs there, right? They're going to fuel your workouts. They're going to fuel you for your endurance, but they're not causing inflammation.
Brown rice, the one where is it called the husk or the chaff
husk,
or whatever that's been stripped off of it, and you get the endosperm of the...
That would be, look at
pause.
you, man. That would be, you know, probably the best choice, right? But I mean, even a white rice, to me, I'm picking that over bread of any caliber, you know. And you know, we can go into the nuances. You know, when you have white rice, that's removed the husk and the bran, right? And so it's been refined. They also remove the oils,
insoluble fiber,
yeah, the good stuff, and it gives you a giant spike in glucose. The glycemic index of white rice is like 90, which is approaching. So there's two issues, right? So we're talking about, is it an insulin issue that you're trying to go after? Which, if you're a bodybuilder, insulin is going to be shuttling. You want insulin, right? But 99% of my patients aren't bodybuilders, and so they like to get on me in the comment section about, well, I want to grow, and this. Okay, but 99% of my patients are obese and hypertensive diabetics, right? So they don't need that big spike in insulin, right? And so I would tell the bodybuilder, like, yeah, get your carbs, but let them be good sources of carbs, right? So we're talking about starches, potatoes, sweet potatoes, rices, these kinds of things.
Whole from the earth. You mentioned that in your book too. It came out because
it came out the dirt.
You said something about how somebody said, oh, well, you said not to get anything in a bag, and frozen broccoli's in a bag.
Right.
And you were like, okay, just stop. All right. Yes.
Right. You got it.
It looks like broccoli still, it came out of the earth looking that way. That would be your exception as something that comes in a bag.
It comes out of a bag. It's broccoli. You can have it. You win. You're right. You know what, Kev? I'm going to steal this. So Kevin is an interesting character, because this is water. Kevin will not drink water unless it comes from a glass container. I know that about Kevin, so I know he's not going to drink this. You got to put, you got to put premium fuel in the...
Bro, you don't put cheap gas in the Ferrari,
you don't
baby.
Put cheap gas in the Ferrari.
Remember that, people. Yeah, so I think right then, if somebody starts, and a big point you made, which I think could be controversial in the medical community, but think about this.
This whole book's going to be controversial in the medical community. I'm not going to win any friends in the medical community for this book. I can assure you of that.
Your invitation to all medical conferences has been shredded.
Right. Now, do I care? I don't and it's not a thing where like I'm on camera and I'm saying I care about people. Like, this is something when I meditate, I care about people, right? So like when I'm by myself, I care about people. And so I don't give a shit if
That's not why you're here.
By the way, all of my doctor friends come to me for their medical advice, right? So, I mean, yeah.
Well, we're not here to be liked. We're here for mastery, right? We're here to further expand and express the spirit of existence.
Well, and we're here to use our brain, bro. Remember the other day, so I feel like I'm talking a lot about Instagram, but I do a lot of this stuff. I put up this thing about bras.
Oh, dude, thank you. First, wait, I'm going to stop you right there, because this is a message I want to spread far and wide into the world. So please, continue.
So I was reading, I read every day, and I was reading a book called Kill Cancer, Not People. Okay. And the author, I think it was Robert Wright, he was pointing out a study that was done that showed that women who wear a bra for 24 hours a day, which I did not know that women did that, but apparently there are, have a three. It was the statistic he gave was a 3 out of 4 chance of developing breast cancer lifetime. Then he said if the person wears their bra for more than 12 hours a day, it's a 1 in 7 lifetime, which if you look at cancer statistics, a female's chance of lifetime cancer is about 1 in 8. So that kind of gelled with what I had read in another place. He said if you wear it for less than 12 hours a day, it's like 1 in 156. And if you never wear a bra, it's 1 in 168, right? So I say this statistic. Now, you don't have to be, like, I haven't read any, NIH studies on the topic, right? But I know that our breasts, well, women's breasts have lymphatic flow, right? So this is your cells that are like, cleaning themselves out, moving, toxins towards the lymphatics, and so they can drain out. So if you're blocking any part of that with a bra for an extended period of time, that would cause buildup of toxins. Like, you don't have to be a Harvard graduate to surmise that makes sense. Boy, they jumped on my case in that Instagram comments. This is, even an oncologist said, this is misinformation. She got on me.
Wow.
And people, this is widely been disproven. Look, man, like the NIH is not spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to study bras. Okay, they're studying things that are going to return a profit, right? So that's why we don't have nutritional studies, because no one can patent nutrition, right? So don't tell me that just because some governing body, which, I mean, listen, Americans have kind of like gotten past trusting these governing bodies, I think. We need to be able to think for ourselves. That's what I'm getting to. Right. So when I see something like that, it resonates with me and it makes sense. So I feel like we're being asked to suspend our common sense in the face of randomized controlled trials. Mm-hmm. And I refuse, man. I mean, there were legendary physicians. The guy that jumps to mind is Abram Hoffer. Abram Hoffer, he was a psychiatrist, I don't know how long ago, in the 40s, I think. He noticed that schizophrenia looked exactly like B3 deficiency. In fact, he would give people that were having these schizophrenic episodes, he would give them B3, and the ones that got better, he realized they were just B3 deficient. That's called pellagra. And the ones that didn't get better, those were schizophrenics. So he observed that. He used his head, and he said, well, maybe if I give the schizophrenics more B3, maybe they'll get better. Cured 90% of schizophrenia in his patient population, like 5,000 cases. If you take the standard paradigm of what you're supposed to do, antipsychotic, you're probably going to get a 25% response rate. And this is probably a placebo, right? Because that's about where the placebo effect is, right around between 25 and 30%. So, these doctors, they get online and they want to skewer me because, there's a randomized controlled trial on that. Look, man, observational studies were being done for a long time before this whole randomized control, it's orthodoxy. It's like you got to put your mind in a box. We got to stop doing that.
Yeah. And I also wanted to
I'll probably be excommunicated from the medical community for saying these things, but
I wanted to touch on the quote that you said, which it basically said 50 to 60% of diabetes, I believe it was, would be cured within 6 months if people just stopped eating bread. Was that what you said?
It was that. No, it was that. So I was making a point in the book where there's the vernacular in books. Okay, so the vernacular that I gave the example was, it's widely known that oversaturation of the insulin receptor with its oversaturation of the receptor with its insulin ligand is the cause for type 2 diabetes, right? And I'm trying to point out the fact that is a very simple statement. It's a simple and true statement. When you have too much insulin on your receptors, you develop insulin resistance, and it manifests as diabetes. And what I was trying to say is, but that's kind of a complicated sentence. If you don't speak medicine and you're thinking, okay, what's a ligand? What's the insulin? How's it work? What's a receptor? If you haven't spent time masticating those ideas,
Thank you, sir.
That would be a very complex topic for you. But what I'm saying is, if Americans could understand that simple, that's how I cure diabetes I can't say cure. That's how I reverse diabetes in my clinic. I teach patients, hey, you need to see less insulin. And once a person understands that, their diabetes goes away, right? And I think from a population standpoint, we could probably reverse 50 to 60% of the cases of diabetes in very short order if we just made people understand this.
Well, I agree 100%.
And again, it goes back to like, why is this not common knowledge? Why is this not being hammered into, this is off the topic, but it kind of similar. During the World Cup, and I didn't see this with my own eyes, but people told me about it, that apparently, I think it was either China or Japan, I don't know, one of these Asian countries, after the game, they walked around with their little bags and they picked up the stadium.
It was Japan.
They picked up garbage,
yes.
And they left the stadium looking beautiful.
Span. Yes.
What a society. What a society. Their government is invested. They're putting something into their people, you know what I mean? Yes. And I feel like that that wouldn't be terribly hard to do. You got the media, teach people something useful. No, but you know what? When you go on, it's another DiGiorno Genie, the pizza commercial, and you got Taco Bell, and they know what they're doing. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And they, like you said, they're all in bed, right? With big pharma, with the government. It's just true. But I wanted to bring you to the point of, so let's go back to the bra. Less bras, more health.
Less bras, more health.
I wanted to definitely talk about that. I'm glad you brought it up because something small like that can make such a big change. And you said the author of the book was a guy?
Author of the book's a guy.
That's
but he was quoting a study, and I believe he was quoting a female. But so I don't remember, and that's what irritates me, man. I say something like this, and all the doubters on Instagram, they want to say, "We need your proof.
They
cite the article." And I'm like, bro, if I begin to cite articles, you're swiping right past what I'm saying anyway. I've got 90 seconds. You don't have a great attention span, so don't ask me to, Rodriguez et al. In Nature Journal 1920. No one's gonna listen.
But this is what I love about you, man, and this is how you've changed my life. You didn't just give me a fish; you taught me how to fish.
Yeah.
And there's that old saying: you give a man a fish, you feed him for a night. You teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
Yeah.
So you're going in and you're saying, hey, this is knowledge that for sure is going to help people. Why is it not being broadcasted into the mainstream media? Why is it not prevalent amongst health practitioners? And your book really brings that to the forefront. And I also think this ties in perfectly with what you say. You said two things that people can do. They could cut out their processed carbs, and they can do the 16-8 intermittent fasting.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything, you do have control over that. You don't need a boatload of money to pay for all this kind of stuff. You can start that right away. And that's just going to take you basically kicking an addiction, because that's what it's going to be. Your body's going to want to stay in the known 100%. And you're going to want to do the same thing you've always been doing because you feel comfortable there. But you need to understand, I can tell you right now, it works. And if you need a source for every single thing, okay, the guy's going to come in and paint your house. Oh, well, give me the sources of who told you how to paint and stop. Okay. Do your research, find somebody who.
And even beyond doing your research, use your head. Like, think about this critically. Does it make sense to eat all day long? No, it does not. At no point in human evolution were we sitting with a pantry and a fridge, right? You ate, and then you might not eat for a little while because, maybe someone in your tribe didn't kill a boar, right? Our bodies are meant for that. Just think for 1 second, You don't need a randomized controlled trial to tell you can't be eating and losing weight. There's a quote, this book, is my Dr. Crush, Dr. Fung, Jason Fung. If this ever makes it to your computer screen, love you, I owe everything to you. First line of his book says, you can ask a kindergartner how to lose weight. And what are they going to say? Stop eating. Right, but we make it this quadratic equation, right? Well, I need to increase my fat percentage, my proteins anymore. It's not that complicated.
Well, I think too, if you are thinking in limitation and you think you're limited because, let's use genes as an example. I'm limited because of my genes. Well, have you heard of epigenetics? Because you can absolutely, with your emotions, signal your genes. You can upregulate certain genes, which produce proteins, and you can downregulate certain genes with certain emotions. And there's tons of studies behind stuff like this. So genes are not an absolutely fixed thing. I remember this term from, it's like Bio 101, but it was heritability. So you have the heritability of a gene where, okay, if you have this certain gene, your chances of inheriting this genetic disease is, let's say, 99% or something like that. But
very few are 99%. It's more like 8%,
But did
something
they take
far lower.
into account epigenetics and all that kind of stuff? They didn't.
That
right?
was relatively new. That's only been so when I was a first year medical student, I was actually doing my pre-med. The guy who was teaching us that was like cutting edge, like at that time. So this is a relatively recent discovery or recognition that you can turn on and off genes and that it's not your preordained destiny because you have because your mom was overweight and your dad was overweight that you're now going to be overweight, which people love to throw that out there. Hey, my blood pressure's high because my dad's blood pressure's high and so is my mom's. No.
But the ironic thing is when you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them.
Oh yeah.
So why would you not understand? And this is a fact. You just cannot deny this. In your imagination, you can think about an unlimited number of things, and everything that you see here that's been invented, anybody who's ever done anything amazing, they first imagined it in their mind. They believed they could do it, and they did whatever it took to become that thing and to do that thing. So if you look at something, you see it as a limitation in your own mind, well, what are you doing? You don't believe that there's an unlimited amount of frequencies or thoughts or emotions that you can feel or do and become. And if that's where you're coming from, that's what you're going to get. Okay, I'm limited. I can't do that. Okay, you're right. No, I'm unlimited. I can do that. You're also right.
So I have to bring this up. This was from me and Kevin's conversation before we started rolling. Kevin was talking about how, so he's into the mobility and he's really diving deep in terms of like how to be able to stretch certain, and I'm not using the vernacular properly, but like he said, no, I can do what they're called pails and rails for my lungs. And I can use the pails and rails in my lungs to be able to stretch my back in a certain way. Like that's, as far as I know, that's an original thought, right? Like you didn't read that from anywhere.
I did not. I came up with that.
And I'm watching you and you're coming up with your shit and you are going to come up with this plan because you believe that you can and you're working on it. And that's the whole thing. My whole thing was I want to be able to get people off their medication and I want to inspire them. So I have a plan to get them off their medication, and beyond the plan, it's more like inspire. It's the inspiration to have them execute the plan, right? And I'm doing it. I'm going to do it. It's in the process of being done, right? It's going to happen. And the same thing with what you're doing.
Well, to some extent, yes, you create it, but more so you uncover it. Mm-hmm. But you need to get out there and start doing it and figuring it out, or else that's not going to happen. So don't stay in the known. The past. Okay, this thing happened to me. And when you say this thing happened to me in the past, all you're saying is that this thing was so emotionally charging for me and it changed me so much, which is also represented anatomically, that I haven't been able to move on from that point. Or the known future. Like, let's say, okay, I got to get gas, I got to get groceries, I got this deadline, right? So you're staying in the known there, right? But if you go into the unknown, it's a scary place. Yep. Anytime you do something new, your entire body tries to tell you to not do it. I mean, I remember doing the cold plunge. Right. And I didn't have to die. I trusted you. And this is true because you can go online right now and find something that will tell you don't cold plunge.
It's deadly.
You're going to die.
It's deadly.
So I trusted you. You said it's good for your mitochondria. You gave me a little bit of the science, but I was like, okay, no. So I'm going to do it. And remember, I thought I was cold plunging at first, and the machine wasn't working. It was like 70 something degree water, and I thought it was.
I got this.
And I was like, man,
great.
It's cold, but it ain't that bad. And then I set it down once it started working to 39, and I got 39 degrees. I'm like, yeah, I got in there, and no. I jumped out in 10 seconds. I was no way. So I set it to 55, and I worked my way down to 39, and then 39 became something I actually enjoyed going in. It was relaxing for me, but I had to go through that period. So
I got to pull bullshit, bro. No one ever relaxes at 39. It's painful.
The first
every
30
last
to
time.
60 seconds.
Right.
There's no, you have to, the thing I'm at now is that, usually when I jump and I'm like, my son will like, so instead of making that noise, I'm like, okay, I feel like I want to make that noise, but I'm going to pretend like I'm not, so that's kind of where I'm at with it right now. But it used to be the first 2 minutes, where it's just like my hands are burning, my legs are burning, and it's almost like I get a little lightheaded, like, oh my goodness. But now it's that first minute, but you have to start, instead of falling in love with the result, you need to fall in love with the process.
Yeah.
The result will come, but you got to fall in love with the process. If you're forcing yourself, and at first you might have to wake up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. to go work out, to eat healthy. Yes, at first you're going to have to do that. But after a while, you are going to learn to love it. I love the keto diet now. I do not crave carbs. I do not crave any of that stuff anymore. I eat meat, I eat vegetables, I eat some cheese, and I really stick to the intermittent fasting, and I do 18 hours. But that brings me to my next point. The fasting, I mean, I would say, and you say this in your book too, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if anything that you can do that will make the biggest change in your life, it will be this 16-8 intermittent
If
fast.
I have only one move, I tell people this all the time. If you're only going to take away one thing from my visit with you, please let it be to time your meals. Just the reductions in insulin, the improvements in sleep. You're going to drop a couple of pounds. That's kind of the cornerstone of my success with patients, is convincing them that you can do this. This is not beyond your ability.
So 16 hours, no eating, 8 hours of eating. And this includes when you sleep, right? So, I mean, if you, like any normal person, usually gets, between 5 and 8 hours of sleep, 6 to 8 hours of sleep, it's really not as hard. I've had people tell me, "Oh, no way, I'm going to get lightheaded." There's no way. And it's like, and you gave me, there was some, if somebody had some sort of an insulin problem or something like that, they wouldn't be able to do it at first or something. But most people don't, right? They have a functioning liver, I think is what you told me.
Right.
Do you have a liver that's functioning, correctly, or was it kidneys or
liver?
It was liver.
Your liver's job is to, when you're not eating, your liver's job is to provide you with sustenance, right? So, so when people tell me, "I've got hypoglycemic," I always will challenge them to buy a glucometer and check, because 99% of the time you're not hypoglycemic, you're uncomfortable. I get shaky. This is an addiction. And if you can't, and I say this in the book, like if you can't consider holding off 4 hours before you go to bed and 4 hours after you wake up without putting something in your mouth, you need to come to terms with the fact that you may have an addiction. Like it is. It's an addiction.
It is. It 100% is.
Yeah.
Just because it's food doesn't mean it's not an addiction.
Right.
And, but again, the addiction thing and being able to do the things that you don't want to do, it's going to always go back to being in control of those 6 inches between your ears. Pause.
Sheesh.
Right. And if you can master yourself, the man who conquers himself is greater than the man who conquers a city. And that's a fact. So that's where your freedom comes from. Because if you are needing to eat that bread or else you'll feel a certain way, if you're needing to have this person in your life for it to feel a certain way, if you need to make this money to feel a certain way, you are not free. That money, that person, that food is your master. So you really need to do that work within and say, hey, okay, when I can control myself and I don't need these things outside of myself to feel happy, to feel gratitude, to feel abundant, that's when you're going to start attracting all those things to you, as opposed to being controlled by them and staying in that same place that you've always been in. And hey, guess what? If that's where you want to be, awesome. If you love where you're at, you want to stay exactly where you're at, you don't want to grow, you don't want to create, you don't want to be something, awesome. Stay there. The beauty of reality is that we can have any reality that we desire. But if you're that person who's saying, "Oh, I hate this thing," or I don't like this thing, but you're not willing to do the thing to change that, then to some degree, you're addicted to complaining about that. And you're addicted to that cortisol, which is basically the stress hormone that is released when you talk about it.
Makes
or when
you feel alive.
That, when you revisit it. So, if you're that person, I would say, wake up and you have to start taking control. If you say this thing causes me anxiety, no, that thing doesn't cause you anxiety, right? Because that thing's outside of you. Has anybody ever overcome an anxiety issue? The answer is 100% yes. Have they ever done it without medication? The answer is 100% yes. So if they can do it, why can't you do it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, I didn't mean to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but with the 16-8 fasting though, I mean, so you say that you can have water, black coffee, or green tea.
Right. And so what we're trying to do, and I want patients to be able to walk away from my conversation with them, understanding the principle, not seeing rules. And it's understanding that anytime you put anything in your mouth, your body stimulates insulin. Okay. So except water, black coffee, and green tea. So now if I have diabetes, I have prediabetes, that means that I'm seeing that's called insulin resistance. And I want to fix that. You don't have to be a Harvard graduate to say, okay, then I just need to give myself less insulin. So that means ipso facto, I got to eat less, right? And so that's kind of what I try to get people to walk away from. I don't want you to see, and that's what people see. They just see the limitation. They see the rules. See your goal. You want to fix your blood pressure? Okay. Well, then you need to see less insulin. You probably need to supplement with some vitamins, and you probably need to supplement with some, some vitamins and some hydration. But what about this? Can I have that? What about that? What's your goal, right? So real quick, how deep are we into this? How much time are we in?
You guys are at 1 hour 11 minutes right now.
All right, I'll start speeding up. So, but I think one of the biggest things though that I take away from the intermittent fasting that you explained to me was the spike in growth hormone, that after 12 hours, your body stops producing insulin and starts producing growth hormone. And growth hormone helps to metabolize your stored body fat. It helps to improve your bone density and your muscle density, and it helps your immune function. And all these things are true, right? So I think downstream from that, if anything, and this happened to me, you know, I've always had, you know, abs or whatever, but when I started intermittent fasting, I got shredded. I mean, skin just got paper thin.
And people who are gym rats will recognize the utility of a fast quickly because you know how your body, that's how I learned about it. Wait a minute. I just got the most tremendous results in 3 months. These are results that should have taken me a year at least to be able to get, and I got them in 3 months. No, there's something to this. I don't care what any article written by anyone says. My intuition tells me that this is valuable.
And as a gym rat, if you've ever looked into buying some somatropin, which is growth hormone, that junk is expensive, bro. Yeah. I mean, even if you're just getting it off the black market, you're talking $700 to $1,000 or more a month. So you could produce your own growth hormone for free. Just by not eating, and you're going to save a little money on your grocery bill at the same time. So it's a win-win. But I mean, so if I'm fasting, I can put a little creamer in my coffee, right?
So here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I want to go on record as saying. No.
What about stevia?
No.
A little lemon, no. You can put lemon in it, right?
No. And I'm going to be skewered by the dorks on the internet that are going to want to Google this. Listen, I'm passing my information to the average person so that they can see results. If you want to do the work, read the book, The Complete Guide to Fasting, right? And you can have some takeaways that'll be useful. But if you're my patient, no. The answer is no.
So I also think something that was interesting was you talked about hormone replacement therapy in women, which I think is not a topic that is really gone into too much. I mean, you see the TRT doctors online, and it's always some jack dude like, oh, this is where I get my TRT.
Right.
But you talked about these tons of benefits for women who, you know, might be going through some premenopausal stuff or might be seeing some symptoms from, you know, postmenopausal issues. So, I mean, touch on that just a little bit. What's a small piece of digestible information?
So the piece of digestible information here is that it's called the Women's Health Initiative. So the Women's Health Initiative was a study they did back in early 2000s where they basically, the conclusion of the study was that hormone replacement was going to increase your risk of breast cancer. And that was plastered all over the media, and it scared the hell out of women in general, right? My mother was one of them. She was told to come off her hormone replacement. They have subsequently, in the years after that, they've dug into the data. And what they showed was not only did it not reach statistical significance. So usually if you're going to draw a conclusion, it has to be statistically significant, which is a statistics term that means it was more than likely not due to chance, right? So that using this hormone more than likely caused the problem. And then they continued to study these women after they came off the hormones. And what they found was, I want to say in the statistics, you forgive me if they're not exact, but it's something to the effect of 40% increased risk in dementia, a 50% increased risk in heart disease, and like a 60% increased risk in osteoporosis, which is a disease that affects women frequently after menopause. And so they've called this Women's Health Initiative one of the biggest crimes that were committed against women. They compare it to the food pyramid, right? That said that we should all be eating 6 to 11 servings of grain a day, right? So after we did that, what happened? 700% increase in diabetes incidence, right? And so, but that study left a very deep scar, you know, on females, right? And so they have this kind of visceral, like I'll talk to ladies about it and they say, oh no, I would never consider that. Why, right? Do you want to invite heart disease? Do you want to invite osteoporosis? Or do you like higher risk of dementia? Because these things have been shown to be mitigated if you can stay on top of hormone replacement. There's obviously rules to it. There's caveats, things that you should and shouldn't do. But yeah, hormone replacement is, that is a core concept. If you're trying to work towards longevity and you're trying to be not only longevity, right? Because someone's going to tell me, well, my grandma lived to be 100 and she never took hormone replacement. But I'm telling you that my healthiest 80-year-olds in my practice, the ones that come in sneakers and they were just at the gym, they've been on hormones since they were in their 50s and 60s. They defied that dogma that said, this is dangerous.
But we've talked about this before, and let's throw that out there. Why are we all waiting for replicable long-term scientific studies before we start trying the modern things that come out? If you're waiting for some long-term study, okay, maybe that thing's going to be proven right in 50 years. You ain't going to be around in 50 years.
For that.
So,
yeah.
To what extent would you?
I mean, this is a personal, risk reward. You have to measure your risk. What's your risk? How much risk are you willing to accept versus the reward, right? So that's kind of the conversation that revolves around peptides. Oh, they're not FDA approved, right? But okay, but they're amino acid chains, and they have. My body was producing these things before, so I'm going to replace them. And, that sort of makes sense, despite the fact that I haven't seen a 50-year retrospective randomized controlled trial. It makes sense. And I feel like, again, we're being asked to neglect our own faculties just because. I don't know. I think that's kind of what it comes down to.
I like your approach because it's built on principles, principles of physiology and also research that you've done and experience that you have actually practicing medicine. But I think talking about mitochondrial function, that was really a big takeaway for me. And the thing I really love about your book, and seriously, and I really thank you for putting this out there, because you give a list of the protocol. And I can proudly say I'm doing everything on that protocol except the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And that makes me feel good. And I look at myself in the mirror and I say, man, my skin's better. My body fat percentage is down. My energy is way up. My joints are feeling better. I mean, it has worked. And I'm going to continue to do all these things. And, so you put it in a nice package where you help the person understand a little bit, but then you also give the exact dosage, which, I mean, that book right there, the use value is going to be huge because I'm going to be able to take that. And it's basically like I'm getting a consult from Dr. Garcia, and it's based on these principles that we're talking about in this, in this show. So
when you come to see me, and this is for the people on Instagram that want to do a consult, how much does it take? Listen, I'm giving away the goods. When I see you, I'm talking about your food. I'm trying to reduce your insulin exposure, reduce your carbohydrate exposure to reduce your inflammation. I'm talking about your sleep. I'm talking about I'm talking about your supplements. I'm talking about your hormones, and I'm talking about what you could do to maximize your mitochondrial function. That's everyone that walks in and out of my clinic. So if you read the book, essentially that's a framework that I'm working in. Now, it gets customized based on a patient's goals. Right. If you want, then we'll spend a little bit more time. We'll give a little bit more in-depth discussion about blood pressure if you want to get off your blood pressure medications, or how you're going to get off your diabetes meds, or if you're on insulin, how you're going to do that. Right. I don't go into those kind of details in the book, but that's the framework that I'm using always.
There's going to be a fine tuning to it. So
it's always going to grow.
Everybody's always going to have a custom game plan, but every single person walking this earth, every being, has an electron transport chain.
Every single one.
And all the electron transport chains do work the same way. So if you optimize that and you focus on that, optimizing your mitochondria, there's going to be an upstream effect and a downstream effect of all the results that follow with that. And you also talk about exercise, which if you look at my doctor, I've gone and seen other doctors as well in the past, and they've never sat me down and asked me about exercise. I mean, they could probably already tell, but exercise, diet, that's not a conversation I ever had with my doctor. It's get your blood labs done. These are the results. Good to go. Let me spend as little time with you as possible and I'm out. So I mean, I think this is groundbreaking what you're doing, but it's almost surprising. Like, how is that groundbreaking?
How have we, bro, I say this all the time. How is shooting to be a healthy 80-year-old by controlling your diet, hormones, and exercise levels 30 years earlier? How is that a revolutionary thought? Why is that not the standard operating procedure, standard protocol? I've said this so many times, bro.
And there's this thing out there, and in arguments, my fiance said this to me several times, like, that's not normal, right? And I'm like, yes, correct. I'm not normal.
Correct.
And I never want to be. Right. I want to be optimal.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's what we're going for here, right? So anybody who's arguing against, hormone therapy, it's like, okay, so your testosterone's at 200. and it's normal. But how you feeling? Oh man, I don't feel like I used to. I'm just getting old. Like, well, why don't you try to optimize all your levels? There's modern medical technology now. And I got a comment online about, and this was that chiropractor who was all, yogaed up and meditated up looking. And he said something along the lines of, oh, comparing, a car to something you shoot in your butt is a stretch. Pause. But, but I mean, it's not, right? Because you're taking modern technology and you're using it to get you to some sort of goal or some sort of place that you want to get to. And there's side effects. Cars have side effects too. There's pollution. You can get into a car crash. Right? But if you misuse them, you're going to increase your chances of that happening. Same thing with testosterone, right? You misuse it, you overdo it, you speed, right? In a car, you higher chance you misuse testosterone. Yeah, there's more, but there's a way to do it optimally and utilize it to bring you to the next spot. And you have phones too. Okay, well, drop your phone. Well, what do you mean drop my phone? Like, that ain't normal. And what about those 5G waves? I don't even know what they're called, but I know it can't be good.
Can't be good.
But you use the phone, right? So why don't you use this medical technology? You're going to wait around for the next 50 years for a long-term study to happen? Well, it's going to pass you by.
I think that guy said that you can never be enlightened. He said he's never seen an enlightened person use testosterone. He's never seen an enlightened person inject himself. So, well, you're screwed. We're all screwed.
Well,
I'll never be enlightened.
If injecting myself is going to give me more time to become enlightened and figure out how to be enlightened, you need to first be in order to do. So I'm going to keep trying to be as long as I possibly can.
Let's go.
But you talk about supplements, you talk about diet, you talk about exercise, you talk about the sauna, you talk about cold plunge, you talk about red light therapy, you talk about peptides. So these are all things that not only in the book, but in the podcast and stuff like that, this is stuff that, you can bring that other doctors, they're just not talking about. And it all is going to stem back to, right, improving that mitochondrial function, improving that hormone function, improving your body's ability to repair and regenerate.
Reducing inflammation.
And this is research-based stuff. You're somebody who knows all this stuff, practices all this stuff, and does it yourself. I mean, look at how tight those sleeves are fitting. You know what I mean? That's not an accident. You know what I mean? So
it's in my son's closet this morning.
You also talk about methylene blue, which, off topic, I got a close friend that I referred to you and he was doing, he's like, oh man, yeah.
He told me, by the way.
I get headaches and I read that it turns your organs blue. Look, you're going to find whatever information you're looking for. And this is a microcosm of what reality is. Mm-hmm. Whatever belief you have, you're going to find it and it's going to find you. Mm-hmm. So if you want to stay there, and that's, you can listen to a board certified physician who's obviously practicing what he preaches and has some results himself and has seen results. You can listen to that, or you can go on Dr. Google and Dr. Google's going to tell you it turns your organs blue and whatever it's going to tell you. I don't even know, but that's going to be just a microcosm of what reality is. You're going to get whatever you believe, you're going to find more of that. And same thing with social media. Whatever you search, you're going to get more of that. Mm-hmm. Whatever feelings you have, you're going to get more of that. You're going to see more of that. So that's exactly what this sort of stuff is.
Yeah.
So,
what I'm trying to do when I see people, I'm basically just throwing out, look, I've read a lot of books. It's almost like my wife and kids think I might be a little crazy. And so when I'm seeing people, I'm really just kicking out ideas. Hey, this is what was said about this. This is what you could do for this. Take it or leave it, take it or leave it. And he just decided to leave the methylene blue, which is fine.
Hey, like I said, you can have any reality you want. And that's the beauty of reality creation. But I think we're talking about switching from the outside in paradigm. I have a symptom. I'm going to put a Band-Aid on my boo-boo and it's going to make me feel better. I'm going to move on, So instead of that, okay, now we're looking at what was the symptom was from. I had redness, I had pain, I had swelling. Okay, that's inflammation. What was the inflammation caused from? Okay, it was the insulin. Okay, what was the insulin? It was the hormones, right? Hormones. It was the mitochondria, right? And we're going to keep going deeper and deeper and we're going to keep going upstream. And the fact is, it's always going to lead to consciousness. It is always going to lead to consciousness. If you're not conscious, none of that stuff is going to matter. It's not going to be in any kind of form of matter, right? So you need to understand that consciousness is always going to come first. And you do have a choice of where you place your attention. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. They did studies of having people think about working out their biceps.
Yes. And
people who actually worked out their biceps and seeing the same results in bicep development within, I think, a 3-week period. And you can look, if you're that person who needs to see the sources, go look it up. It's real. It's true. So if your mind has an effect on matter, your body and your anatomy, then you got to think of it like this. If your mind can set up the software for you to be able to receive and give something, right? So you have a certain thought, a certain belief, it gives you a certain emotion, right? Let's say, and I always use this example because I think it's an easy one to remember, but you get turned on, right? You don't have to be in the room with the person to get turned on. You can think about it. It turns you on. You have a bodily response because of that. And that bodily response gives you the ability to receive and to give that thing that you're feeling and thinking. So set up the software. Psychology talks about seeking and attending. You seek and attend the information that fits with your current beliefs. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And when you're thinking about being unlimited or you're thinking about being limited, your body's going to set up all the software for you to see that, for you to feel that, for you to be able to perceive that. So if you need to start setting up that software, if you're somebody who wants to grow or create or to heal themselves, you got to set up that software to be able to give, receive, and become that thing and upregulate and downregulate those genes to create those proteins that are going to be able to have that stuff happen. Maybe
just a closing thought. And I think you told me that I've discussed this here before, but I mean, seen it with my own eyes, you know, the lady, 92-year-old lady with, she had a nasty breast cancer, man. I didn't even need a biopsy of it. All I had to do was look at her breast. It was graphic, right? And she basically just said, I'm going to recite my verses and I'm going to be okay. And to this day, she's still a patient of mine. No breast cancer. All the oncologists are floored by the case, you know. And just I think that's a very prescient and concrete example of she believed it.
And there's a lot of stuff out there, self-help, you know, and you could, you know, but this podcast and what we're doing, this isn't self-help. This is self-destruction. We want you to destroy that old self. We want you to destroy that weak part of yourself and let that ruler, let that warrior, let that king emerge. And so you can start conquering your life and not letting the things in your life conquer you.
Breaking the habit of being yourself. As said by
Joe Dispenza. And you mentioned Joe Dispenza in your book. So, I mean, your book is very comprehensive in that way. It's packaged in a way that I could understand. And I've got a little bit of background in that stuff, but not quite like Dr. Garcia. And I can say one more thing. Every second you spend doom scrolling, going into your bad habits, arguing with an idiot, that's a second that you are taking away from your future empire. So don't allow that to happen.
Bro. That's fire.
Don't allow that to happen.
That's a ball. Write that down. I think it's a good place to stop and
it's
to
time to wrap it up.
All right, I'm gonna have to pop my collar. Let me pop my collar for this. Wrap it up here real quick. Getting serious. A wise man said that failure to plan is a plan to fail. But Doc Fabe said the same thing when it comes to health, cause nothing else means more when you love yourself. So don't ignore those love handles above your belt. I wouldn't call it ignore it, it's that I'm 40 and normally people start getting porty. So when I'm pouring my Coca-Cola, then pardon me, it's just that I'm enjoying Americana. Don't want to talk diabetes avoiding. I see you, shorty. Look at you all sporty and pretty, sort of thick, so you ignore me, but tomorrow you'll be 50. You know it's hard to see how bread leads to heart disease, especially when you're young with a body like Cardi B's. But listen, age is something you gotta plan for, and chronic disease is something we can't stand for. It's not heredity, they said it but they lied. It's the food you eat that's been genetically modified. If you wanna win this game, eventually realize institutions getting money got a tendency to lie. Whoa, Unc got conspiracy theories. I think he's on drugs like Timothy Leary. Food Nazi, cause he must not see or he's not hearing me clearly. All I wanted was some cinnamon toast crunch and spaghetti. Why you acting like it's so deadly? Decent question. Let me teach my people lessons. Refined grains and refreshments, the snack food of adolescence, can turn you fast to new diabetics. Yeah, I seen it all, so I won't chill. Fight back, fix your food first, and fuck those pills.
Yo.
Now available on Amazon.
Dang.
Read it in a weekend. Woo. Practice it for life.
Bro.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, dude.